What's going on, guys? My name's Rob Riley. Calvin McChesney is behind the edits, and today, welcome to another interview. Today is a really special one. Today, we're joined by Joshua Grosvent, K-Rock Josh, Weekday Whiskey Josh, man of many names. Josh, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Nobody ever really wants to interview me because I talk so much about myself. So it's rare for people to want to talk to me.
Well, listen, you are a local legend. I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm
All right.
excited to talk to you and get to know the story that made you, who we all know today, and
Cool.
deep dive it. So for anyone living under a rock that doesn't know who you are, that doesn't know what you do you mind listing off maybe your top titles?
Well, right now I do morning radio on K Rock, 100.9 in Syracuse, 106.5 in Oswego, 94.9 in the Utica Mohawk Valley area. And then obviously streaming everywhere and twitch.tv/KRockCNY and podcast host and now just a guy who slings whiskey on the side, a little bit everything.
Absolutely.
And then also a husband of 13 years and a father of two.
Most importantly, right? Most
Yeah.
importantly. Awesome. Well, very cool. Very cool. So I'm really excited to deep dive it, figure out everything in your journey that led up to you getting to where you're at, and talking about more about what you're doing and the ins and out of all of that. So let's dive right into it.
Cool, man.
Where are you originally from? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Right here, born and raised, Central New York. I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital in Syracuse. I was raised between Fulton, New York, and Pennville, New York. I'm mostly Pennville, New York, which is over near the Clay area, if you're not familiar with that.
Okay.
I've lived in Oswego County almost all of my life. I can say all of my life just because I moved away for a couple of years in my 20s and came back, but I've always been an Oswego County resident. And I grew up here, grew up in Oswego County, went to Oswego State for college,
Nice.
graduated there in 2004. And I've just always been in the area. I love it here.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I always hear from Syracuse natives is it always brings you back in. Even if you leave, it always kind of sucks you back in. The culture.
Yeah, and people always say it like it's a negative, but I don't think so. Like I've been to a lot of places and I like it here. I like that I can have my privacy and then I can be to any major city. I can be to Boston. I can be to New York. I can be to Toronto, in half of a day. So I like it here. I like how it's located, and I like raising my family here for sure.
Nice. I like that. What was early childhood life like? Was it suburban or was it more city? And what kind of stuff were you into?
Totally country living.
Okay.
Single mom until I was 10. She remarried when I was 10. So we were, living in an apartment up until then. Stepdad comes along, great guy, gets us a house out in Pennville. And it was just kind of that, like, I don't know where you grew up, Rob, but it's kind of like that suburban country life where it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of houses, but we're lighting giant bonfires and we're driving go-karts and we're smashing things with baseball bats. So it's like, it was that perfect combo of kind of like, backwoods country freedom with also having all of your neighbors nearby. Like that's the bummer about my kids is we live on a tract of 10 acres right now with nobody around us. So I do feel bummed that they don't get to like ride their bikes to see friends like I did, but that's just kind of how it was. You went out in the woods and you caused trouble and then you came home in time for dinner. It was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, same. I was suburban kid. That's same sort of stuff, and I love the idea of like growing up with my friends right around. Right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
I didn't need my mom to drop me off somewhere, and those people became my best friends, and those people became the people that really shaped my childhood. Was the same true for you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have all a lot of ways the same friends I've had my whole life. And even though we move around, like, I've my two closest friends, one moved to Baltimore when we were in our 20s, the other joined the army, and now he lives in Colorado with his wife, but we still talk all the time. And then just the ones that have stayed around here, I see all the time, pre-COVID, I could go see them all the time, but they're just around, and I like it. The high school I went to in Phoenix wasn't like cliques. There wasn't like jocks and art kids and all that. It was so small that everybody just kind of hung together. So
Mm.
I see all those same people growing up now and raising their own families, and it's so weird because you don't realize that you're almost 40. Like I turned 40 this year, and I still see the people I went to school with, but now they're at the school with their kids, and we are the parents now. And it's just weird to be in the same school that you went with them, but now their kids are there and they're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old.
Huh. I never even thought about the fact that that was even a likelihood of staying
It
in town.
is.
Yeah,
It is. My kids go to the same school my wife and I went to right now. They're in the same school district.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff were you into as a kid with all your friends?
Um,
What were some of your hobbies?
Really, I wasn't much into sports. Like I tried it forever and I played soccer up until high school, but I really loved the arts. I loved, getting on stage. I loved playing in bands. I loved like, when you were my age, Nirvana was a big deal because the band Nirvana came out kind of exactly when I was hitting my teenage years. And they were just kind of like the anti everything. And I think a lot of, especially boys that were my age, saw that and they were like, oh man, I hate everything and everyone. And I want to rebel against the world. Even though we've all got, like, most of us have the best lives and, we're living in houses and we're comfortable, we're still, that angsty stuff started happening. So I gravitated towards more of that. Like I liked punk rock and loud music and mostly I just like being funny. Like no matter what was going on, laughing has always been my favorite thing. So I always gravitate towards people that were funny and made me laugh and wanted to be funny. Like as bad as I wanted to be like a brooding Kurt Cobain, I was much more interested in being the clown. So like on the outside, I'd have the long shaggy hair and I'd try to be all gross and punk rock, but I was more interested in just making people laugh. And
Nice.
that's what I gravitated towards.
That's cool. Were you more introverted or extroverted as a kid?
I'm way more introverted now than I was when I was a kid. Like when I was
Really?
a kid, I would just go do anything and everything. Even in my 20s, like some of the things I did in my 20s, I'm like, I could never do that now. But just making an ass of myself at all times when I was a kid was fine. I was never embarrassed by anything. So yeah, I'm way more closed off now than I was then.
That's really interesting. What do you think played into that? Just youthful fun and whatnot?
Yeah, you just don't really like, you're too young to know to be embarrassed. As weird as that sounds, you're
Hmm.
just like, I have nothing to worry about. What do I care? I'll just go and make my friends laugh and be funny. And you're just you're immature. Like there's a lot of that too. And I mean, it's weird that I'm in a position where I'm a public figure because I don't like being a public figure. I don't like being in the public. I like doing what we're doing right now, where I'm just kind of alone in a room and I can talk.
Yeah.
So that's why I was gravitated towards this. I like this a lot more than in my youth when it was a lot of get on stage, do stand up, play in bands. That was all then. And then the older I get, the more I just kind of want to do this where I can just be with my thoughts and talk. And I don't know. I don't know why that evolution happened. It just
Hmm.
did.
That's interesting. I'm 100% kind of jumping ahead here, but just something I'm
No,
curious
whatever.
about. When you're doing radio,
Yeah.
do you imagine you're talking to tens or hundreds of thousands of people? Or
No.
okay,
No.
is it
I
just
never, because like, if you do, like, there's numbers and we don't like ever really see numbers, but like, you could look at it like, I don't know, the Carrier Dome holds like 50,000 people or whatever it is. So
Mhm.
say that your cume or whatever is at any given moment 50,000 people are listening. If you visualize you walking out into the middle of a full Carrier Dome
Yeah.
and making, fart jokes or making a stupid comment, you'll just shut down. You won't ever, like, if you visualize it, you'll never do anything because you'll be so aware of that. So I just tell myself that no one's paying attention and that I'm just talking to you right now, Rob, even though, whoever's going to listen to this after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the secret of my success is I'm always just trying to be genuine in the moment and talk to, the room instead of the invisible audience.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't mean to jump ahead there for everyone that's listening, but I think that's way easier said than done. It's definitely a skill that you have grown in. Like, it's a skill you have as an entertainer, because I don't think many people can separate the two.
You have to be able to, in both scenarios, you have to be able to live in the silence. So like when I was a comic years ago, and I would like, if you're on stage and you're not getting a laugh, that silence creates like a tension, and you feel really like conscious of it and uncomfortable, and it ruins everything. And when I first started doing radio, I wouldn't never let myself pause because I was afraid of that silence. And it creates this kind of like fake pace, and like you're talking in a non-realistic way because you think that you can't have silence. But I like in this medium how things can breathe and you can pace, and sometimes things are allowed to pause, and there's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of times, like, it helps to go back and listen, because when you pause and in your mind it feels like that was an hour and a half long pause, it was just 10 seconds and nobody noticed but you. So it's good to reassure yourself of that. But I like living in the silence and letting things kind of ebb and flow and breathe and be natural.
I love it. That's super cool, super interesting, super fascinating stuff. And I think no matter what field people are in, there's always things that can be learned from just listening to people's processes and how they grew. And I don't know, that it fascinates me. But to get back to, your story, you were talking earlier about how you went to a smaller high school, and you there were no cliques and everything. Was that something that you saw as a downside? Like, what was your class size? And do you look at that like a downside, or were you happy to be in a smaller school?
I loved it. I loved being in a small school. I loved being able to just know everybody and know the community and have opportunities, because like, my wife, she's a speech language therapist at a bigger school, and you see that a lot of these kids can't get a shot on the soccer team, or they can't get a shot on the on the play because there's 500 kids per class. But what I liked is that you know I had a chance to do anything, and I had the chance to try everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if I liked it, great. If I didn't, no big deal.
Yeah. No, I think see, I was the opposite. I went to a school with 650 kids in my graduating class in my high school, and I saw somebody new every day of the year. Like, there was no way to know everybody. It was a very cliquey. I had a rough time, very introverted through high school, and I think that shaped, who I am today and my personality today. Do you think the same way about high school? And
Oh, totally. Because there, like I said before, there was no clicks. There was no, and it could have even just been because I've heard that my high school is the same size now, but I heard that kids have changed and maybe the clicks are a little different. I know that you're younger than me, so things were probably different for you than they were for me. But in the '90s when I was there, into the late '90s, there just wasn't like it was that vibe. It could have been like that at every other school. I only knew my school, but it was just like we're all in this together, like we're all angsty teenagers. And it was like that movie Can't Hardly Wait, or like all those 90s movies that came out, like Clueless, where it's like everybody is just in it together, and there's the jock and there's the drama kid, there's the art kid, and the overachiever. That just was the vibe then. And I think it was really important because I didn't feel embarrassed, and I felt like it was okay to just be funny and fail if you wanted to fail.
that's cool. I think, and correct me if you disagree, but it seems like the world was a lot less divided back then too.
It felt like it to me. I mean, I was just a teenage kid. I didn't know much, but it felt like that. I never had those days where I was afraid to go to school, or I mean, this was all like pre-Columbine stuff too. So like kids would just walk out and have cigarettes during lunch, and the doors were unlocked, and you went and you came and you went, and it was just a different time. And it bums me out that my kids will never get to experience that, but I hope that they find their own version of that, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. At what point did you decide college was in the play for you, or in the cards for you, or did you always want to go to college?
No, I'm a terrible student, and I never
Interesting.
wanted to go to college. I never expected to go to college. I'm an awful. When I say I'm an awful student, on my course 2 or course 3 math regents, I got a 14 out of 100. So that's on my SATs. I got a 700 something out of what was then, I think 1600 was the max.
Okay.
Because I was holding a hot dog weenie roast in the parking lot afterwards. And that was more interesting to me than even doing the SAT. So I never planned on going to college. But as is most of my life, I kind of fell ass backwards into it because apparently Oswego County at the time did not have a community college. They do now. It's Cayuga Community College. But back then they didn't have one. Unlike Onondaga County had OCC, and they have different community colleges. And that's the college that everybody, I don't know if it's still this way, but everybody who lives in the county is allowed to go to if they pay tuition. They can't be rejected. So my parents said, are you going to go to college? And I said, I don't want to go to college. No one's going to accept me. And what am I going to do in college? At the time, I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. So I was like, I'm just going to go and be a comedian and be on TV. And they're like, well, you got to go to college. Here's what we'll do. They said, go to Oswego because that's the only school that will take you because of the community college thing. They said, go to Oswego for a year. We'll split it with you. So you'll do half loans and we'll pay the other half. And after a year, if you don't want to go, then you can be done. So I go for a year. End of the year comes and they go, all right, so you going back next year? I go, nah, I don't think I'm going back next year. And they go, all right, go one more year. We'll split it with you. You play half, we'll pay half. This happened for 4 years. Every year I would say, I think I'm done. And they would say, go. So by the third, and so this whole time I'm in college, I have no major. I have nothing. I know that I'm just paying, whatever the few $1,000s was back then to go to Oswego State. It was like $5,000 a year in student loans. I was like, all right, this $5,000 is like if I was living somewhere. This is my apartment, and I'm just going to take classes that interest me. Like I want to take classes that I'm interested in. I'm not planning on getting a degree. While I'm here, till I don't come back anymore, I want to learn what I can. So by that third year, I go to my advisor, and I go, hey man, I'm just kind of bouncing around. My parents keep saying I can come back, and he said, well, you've accidentally fallen into a broadcasting major because you've taken all the broadcasting courses because they interested you. And I go, oh, that's a major? Then I guess that's what my major is. And that's how I graduated.
No
and he
way.
said, if you just take like one math class and one of this general ed classes, you have a major in broadcasting. So I said, all right, then that's what I have. And I finished it, and that's what I graduated with.
No way. So you didn't find at any point. So I take it you went into college being interested and intrigued by broadcasting then, obviously, right? Falling into everything like that?
Well, I was just taking classes that I thought would help me be on TV someday. My goal was to either be on Saturday Night Live or be David Letterman. David Letterman has been my hero for my entire life. So I figured, well, David Letterman, he needs to know how to be a broadcaster, and he needs to know how to speak to groups of people. So I would take classes in public speaking. I would take classes in Oswego at the time. You could either focus on TV or radio. And I didn't really like TV because, like I said before, I like this more. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, well, I can do the radio thing, and maybe that'll, I can become David Letterman somehow that way. So I was just taking a bunch of radio classes and audio production classes and graphic design classes because I'm like, well, you're going to need to design flyers if you're out there. Like I was just taking utility courses with no goal at a degree. I felt like I was cheating the system because I was like, I'll give you money, you give me knowledge that I actually need, and then we'll just clean our hands of this. And you don't got to give me a piece of paper or anything. Mm-hmm. You've given me the stuff in my brain, and now I'm done. And I was planning on leaving, but then I accidentally fell into a broadcasting degree.
So I find it so interesting because my girlfriend goes to college for music, and I went to school for business, and I hear a lot that people who go into school for things that they believe they love or want to pursue end up hating it because of the structure and the
Yeah.
everything about it. Did you have anything like that while you were in school with
No,
radio? No,
never
really.
once. And I would witness all these people who are like, well, I got to get my, I got to be a teacher. So I got to do these classes. And they were all stressed all the
Hmm.
time. And I was so laid back because I didn't care. It's a bad message to give, but I didn't give a shit about grades and I didn't care about anything else because at the time I felt like I was cheating the system. Like, haha, I'm giving you money and you're teaching me how to cut up audio and I'm going to go make a career out of that. Like, I'm an idiot because that's what college is, you moron. Like, that's what you're doing. That is the exchange. But in my head, I was like, oh, I figured this out. I'm just going to keep learning what I want to learn and I'll go, live my life afterwards.
Did you end up doing okay in these classes that because you were enjoying them?
Yeah, I did great because
Yeah,
that's
it's
always
so
been
interesting.
my case. My mom always says that. Like, I was diagnosed with ADD. It's ADHD now, but ADD when I was a little kid. And she always said, one of the things about ADD is that you have hyper focus. So you can't focus on things you don't care about, but if it's things that interest you, you hyper focus on them. So as a kid, I wouldn't care about math homework, but I would sit and build a whole computer, or I would take apart an entire guitar to see how it worked and put it back together. So that's always kind of been how I found my interests. If it's something that I'll just hyper focus on, like there was, I'm self-taught in a lot of ways because everything has been utilitarian for me. Like back in when I get out of college, I need to build a website. Well, I don't have any money to pay somebody how to build a website, so I better teach myself HTML and CSS. So I teach myself, HTML and CSS. And then, I need to teach myself how to make flyers. So I have a couple of those graphics classes and I make some flyers. And all right, I want to try to make a podcast. So how do I edit audio? And all these things that I thought I was cheating the system with ended up being my education. And because I could hyper focus on them, like people in my life will tell you that if I'm interested in something, I can spend a day on it. Like I can spend, if I had like a project in front of me, my latest project is this whiskey business, which we'll talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
if I've got to do something with the whiskey business, I'll sit down for 5 hours and just do things. I'll do orders, I'll do website stuff, I'll do stuff. And not a minute of that feels like stressful time because that's just how my brain works. If it's something I like doing, then I'll just do it for as long as it takes until it's time to go to bed.
What do you tell people like that struggle with similar stuff about, have you found any strategies to doing the stuff you don't enjoy? Like the stuff that you can't hyperfixate on? Or is it just like, what's that like for you?
Well, it's interesting because my mother always said, I hope you have a child just like you. And I did. And I have my daughter who's exactly like me. And if she's not interested in it, she's not going to do it. But if she's interested in it, she will spend a day or more just doing it. Like things like she'll play, Roblox and build entire towns in Roblox and all these, computer things that she really, really loves. But she hates math. So my advice to her is the same advice I give myself. You got to eat an elephant one bite at a time, man. And you come home, do it, because you'll be so happy that you did. I procrastinated so much when I was her age that now that I'm older, I'm like, now I know if I got to do things like there's parts of, my radio job that are just tedious and I don't want to do them and I want to just keep putting them off. But instead my approach is I'm going to get these done before 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and then I don't got to think about them anymore. So that's what I do is I just kind of force myself to front load it. And then you feel so good when it's done that you can get on to the things you actually like.
Yeah, man, that's such great advice because so many people struggle with ADD and ADHD, and so many people struggle with it undiagnosed. I think a lot of people.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, I'm stupid, or oh, I can't focus, and they don't realize that they're struggling with an actual condition that people like you who have become successful, despite those challenges, have learned ways to still progress and be successful with. And I think
you can navigate it if you become aware of it. You can definitely navigate it and use it to your advantage.
So good. So Josh is going through college. Things are going well. He thinks he's absolutely crushing the system. How did you go from that to taking classes to eventually getting a degree to where did you end up out of college? What were you doing? What were your goals like?
So my goal was still to be on Saturday Night Live or be David Letterman. And I didn't know how to do that. So I figured I'll just move to New York City. And that's what I did. I had no money. Me and 3 friends took a U-Haul and moved to New York City. We lived in Queens, New York in a 2-bedroom apartment, 4 guys, 2-bedroom apartment. And I lived off no money. I would go into the city and try to find stand up. I mean, it was my grad school. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. Nobody gives you a course on this. And if it's loud in the background, let me know. My kids just got in the shower. Can you hear anything, or is it all right?
I can hear a little bit of noise. My phone's going off too.
Oh, all right. That should stop soon. So that was my grad school. My grad school was like, I'm just going to go and do this and see how this plays out. And that goes back to what I said before. I couldn't do that now. There's no way 39-year-old me could do what 22-year-old me did, where I just loaded up a U-Haul and went to a city I've never lived in, to an apartment I never visited, but I saw on Craigslist, and the photos look nice, to a neighborhood I've never been in, and just figure it out and live dirt poor for years just to have that experience. But it was the best.
And what was did you have a plan? I know you said you wanted to do things, right? You wanted to be David Letterman. You wanted to be on SNL. But did you just drive there and you're like, I'll figure it out?
Kind of, it was, yes, yeah. But it was also an arrogance because you think, obviously, I'm the funniest person, I can succeed. But it was the best wake-up call because it taught me that what you think your path is isn't necessarily your path. But you don't know that until you try it. So I wanted to be a stand-up, or I wanted to be on SNL, or I wanted to be David Letterman. And I moved down there. And I meet all these people. And I, become friends with people who either work at SNL, or they are touring comics, or they write for this show or whatever. And after a couple of years of seeing that, I realized I don't want that. I didn't want that life because I had never seen what it was. I'd only like imagined it.
Only the good parts in your mind.
Yeah, I only knew the good parts, and I was seeing these guys who were in their 40s and still doing the road and still hustling. And I was like, all right, I don't think I want this. So I started leaning really, really into the audio world. And that's kind of where my love landed, like this, the radio world, the podcast world. I was making a podcast in 2006, before anybody knew what a podcast was. I was trying to make a podcast. So that's when my mind shifted to, yeah, maybe this isn't for me. And it wasn't for me. But I would have never known that. If I hadn't gone to do that, I would have regretted my whole life going, man, I could have made it. I could have done it. I knew I could have done it.
Yeah. What do you still think, like, you followed your passion or what you believed was your passion? Do you still think that's good advice?
To what? Follow my passion?
To follow your passion and go that way.
Yeah, because that might not be your passion. Like, you might think, I want to be, in my case, I want to be a touring comedian, and I want to be all these things. And you get close to it and you realize that's not what you wanted. What you wanted was to have a creative space under the rules that you set. Like, I didn't want to live that life. I'm a homebody. I like coming home to my house at the end of the day. I like seeing my kids, seeing my wife. I don't want to live out of hotels. I don't want to do that, thing where you're in the entertainment industry fighting with people all the time. And none of it really appealed to me. But I didn't know that until I chased it.
Yeah.
And once I did, I now have no regrets. So I would say for anybody, follow your passion so you can say you did it and don't be afraid to give up on it. I have so many friends who just decided at 20, I'm going to be blank. And that's all they are. They're just going to be blank. I have friends who, I'll use comedians, for example. I have friends who at 22 are like, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. And here they are in their early 40s still trying it. And it's like, God bless you. You got the hope, but it's not happening, Don't try to force a square peg into a round hole. fight for it. I mean, maybe something's going to happen for you. I don't know, but don't be afraid to say maybe this isn't for me. It's okay. I would say that I failed at that. There was a lot of things that I succeeded at it, but I think it's okay to say, you know what, I failed at that thing. That wasn't a good fit for me, but I found the best fit for me.
That's an absolute gem. I think I don't even know. I'm still 22. And, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a professional skateboarder. That was, right. I mean, there was nothing else in the cards for me. And if you told younger me, listen, kid, like, you can't even do a kickflip, it's not happening, I would have been devastated. And I feel like as you get older and as you spend more and more of your life doing something, you just begin to accept the fact, or begin to think like, I've put so much time into this, I'm not just going to let it go. At what point do you think somebody should even, like, do you stop trying when you're unhappy? Do you keep pushing past that point? When does somebody actually make the call to make the switch, in your opinion?
I think that especially people who are your age are under so much, and I sound so old saying you at your age, 22, but it's true. Like when I was 22, I was in the beginning of social media, and you guys are now in the depths of it. And it's so competitive. And everybody wants to show you, well, I grew up and made something of myself, or haha, I went to school with you and now I'm doing this. Everyone's trying to out-succeed each other on social media. I'm more successful than you. Especially when you're in your early 20s, because everyone is so self-conscious. But everyone is just as scared shitless as the next person. But they're not putting that out there. They're just showing, well, hey, we just got our first house. Hey, look at this car I just bought. Hey, I got this promotion. It's brag, brag, brag. And then what happens with the people that are just focused on bragging, they're never really happy, because what are you doing this for? Like, are you doing this for Facebook posts? Like, is that your end game, is to show everybody that you went to high school with that you out-succeeded them? Or is your end game going to bed every night happy with what you did that day? And I'll take the latter every minute of the day. Like, I don't care if anybody thinks I'm a success, a failure, funny, not funny. I don't go to bed ever feeling like, man, I'm trapped, I'm lost, I can't get out of this. Because I followed the wave the way it went. And there's so many people that'll be like on that surfboard of life and it's trying to take you this way. And you're like, no, this is the way I'm supposed to go. I know it, but you don't know it. You don't know where you're supposed to go until you get there. And who's to say I'm even where I'm going to be,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A year ago, I wasn't going to have a whiskey business, but now I do, because I follow the wave. I follow where it goes. Everybody finds their path. So you might be that guy who wanted to be a skateboarder, and then you went and you got your business, your education in business. And then who's to say 2 years from now, there's an opportunity to own a skate shop or, a skate something. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
You collect these little skills along the way. And then when the opportunity presents itself, you're ready for it. That's what I always said, be ready. Opportunity will knock. That's what I always say. Just be ready when it does. Don't be ignoring it, or don't pretend like, no, that's not an opportunity because I want this over here. Well, knock, knock, knock. See what that is. If you get that phone call one day where someone's like, hey man, I got this idea for a business, and you're going to go, no, I don't want to talk to you because I have another idea. It could be a knock, man. You never know.
Man, it seems like you had, I don't know. It seems like you had a lot of self-awareness, and I will say that you're right. Like, now everything is hyper competitive. I mean,
yeah.
Kids, from the time that they start, being able to walk, you're usually training for something, right? You become a soccer player, a basketball player, and you are that throughout your entire, career. Or you are an artist, you start painting, your parents put a paintbrush in your hands or something like that, and you are that. And now, if you do too many things, you're not actually good enough at any of those things to even compete at the level that you need to actually be anyone in any of those spaces.
Right.
And I think that from hearing what you're saying, like, you being able to taste a couple different things along the way constantly has is like opened your mind to different things and different possibilities, as opposed to just thinking like, oh, well, this is what it is. I'm just going to accept it and just not like what I do.
Yeah, that's not my style. Like I don't know if I've been lucky. I'm sure there's a lot of luck to do with it, but it's also just a mind, it's a mindset. My parents were fantastic about never pressuring us to do or be anything. Like I'm
Mhm.
legitimately the first person in my entire family to go to college. Nobody before me had ever been to college. So there was really no bar. It's kind of the same thing that my wife and I have with our kids. There's expectations. You are expected to do your schoolwork. You are expected to do certain things. But I will never force you to do something that you're clearly unhappy with, and I will never, force you into something that's not a good fit. I'm not going to make you go and learn karate if that's not an interest to you, because I really do believe that people find their way, and I'm confident that my kids will find their way.
Yeah, man, I love it. I absolutely love it. So, you're in New York. You are figuring out that this is not what you want to do with your life. Do you pack your bags and head home to Syracuse area, or
Mm-hmm.
what was
Yeah.
that like?
I at the time I was dating a woman who is now my wife, and she was still up here. She had graduated college. She had her first job. We do the long distance thing, and after those first couple of years living in New York, getting a lot of experience and having a lot of cool things happen for me, but to that point, I kind of had this thing pulling me back that was really, really appealing. Just that quiet, central New York life with the woman I loved. And it was just that was way more attractive than really anything down there. And it was an easy decision. So when the lease ran out in September, August, whenever it was, I just loaded up another U-Haul and came back home. I didn't have much. I had a bed frame and a desk and a couple of guitars. That was really, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot to move. I think I moved it in a van, to be honest with you.
It was the small U-Haul.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's so fascinating because yeah, I mean I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just am thinking about the willpower to give up on such a big move, to just pack up, go to New York. There almost seems like there would have been something like a I don't know, screw you, like I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove I made the right decision. But that lack of pressure to do something and just like your willingness to change up your path seems like it worked really well. So now you're headed back to Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a plan, a job? What's the goal? Are you trying to go
No,
get started with anything? What was going on in your life then?
I have no plan. I got a job as a greeter at the Harley Davidson store, where if you came in, I would just say, "Welcome to the Harley Davidson store." And I would show you where the different motorcycles were.
How long did you do
And I
that
had
for?
no plan. What's that?
How long did you do that for?
Maybe a year, a little over a year or so.
Okay.
And I wanted to do this. I wanted to be on the radio, but there's no real way in, if that makes any sense. Like, you want to be on the radio, but what have you done? So I go around, I'm like, anybody hiring for radio? And they said, well, we have a part-time job where you're the promo crew. So you go drive the van, you set up the table, the radio people come over, you give out the prizes, you tear everything down, you go home. And I was like, all right, then I guess I'll do that. So between that and the Harley job, that was just kind of my plan. And nobody was putting me on air, not yet. So I went back to the podcast. And this was back 2008, maybe 2009. And I thought, well, no one's doing a live podcast. So how can I combine my world of stand-up with my love of this? So I got a bunch of equipment and I built this big desk that had wheels on it. And I would wheel this big contraption, which was like a portable radio studio, out onto a stage. And me and my buddies would do a live podcast, and we would do it every week. And that was my way to get better at this, because it was kind of like, Yeah, I did it a little bit in college, and I had the college air shift, but I really got to cut my teeth on this if I want to do this. So I did that for years. I mean, we did that podcast for like almost a decade, I think, a very long time.
And what were you talking about? What sort of stuff were you guys podcasting
It was like
about?
the show you hear now. It was just topical
cool
stuff, but it was in front of an audience. And the show was called Walk Up Radio because the concept I had was I'm going to put a microphone in the middle of the room and anybody can walk up to it at any time. So
wow,
it's your ability to just completely derail, interrupt a show live in front of an audience. And that was kind of the gimmick. Like we would be on stage and people would just get up, and if they disagreed or they wanted to say something or they were hammered, they'd walk over to this microphone and start talking to us. And it really helped, help me get comfortable doing this. And after that, for a little while, like there's a Sunday air shift that opens up. Do you want to do Sunday mornings? And you go, yeah, I'll do Sunday mornings. And I've done every job in radio, which is why I have such a respect for everybody who does every job in radio. I was on the promo team. I did the weekend shifts, the shifts that you have to work on holidays. So you don't get Christmas off. You don't get Easter off, none of that. I was on the sales staff where I would try to sell commercials for the radio staff. I did it all. But I just kind of kept my grind going to where I was on Sundays. And then, hey, Josh, do you want to fill in on the morning show? And then a couple of years of that. And hey, Josh, this station needs a morning show. Do you want to do that? I mean, and then here we are 10 years later. It was just kind of, it was my same approach as college. Like if I just hang around, something's going to happen. And it did.
Was when you were doing the promo and all that sort of stuff, was that with K-Rock early on?
No, I started over at Cumulus, which is 93Q, 95X, and those stations. I was there in the beginning part of my career, and I started filling in with Ted and Amy. They're the morning show on 93Q, and if one of them was on vacation, I would be the other Mike. And then 95X had an opening for a morning show, so I had asked if I could try that, and the guy who was the program director at the time let me do it with him. And then he and I got hired to come over to K-Rock. He was let go, and then I've been on K-Rock for 8 years now, 7 years, 8 years.
You know what's funny is it's interesting how you described that you kind of just fell into place, right? I just did a podcast about something I'm calling the success funnel, where essentially, long story short, my thesis was if you just keep working hard enough, honing your skills and learning, success is almost inevitable, right? Obviously there's other factors, but everything I've done, I've kind of just, you just continually get better at it. You work at it, all that sort of stuff. How were you were just honing your skills by doing the live show, the live podcast in front of the audience. You were just trying to get in front of a mic as much as you could. At any point, did you have doubts? Did you struggle? Or was this just natural to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of doubts. And in the world of radio, you think you're going to get fired every day. That's just the world of radio. It can change so fast. But to what you just said, that is the key to my success, is I realized very early on, going back to college, I'm not the funniest. I have a high-pitched, whiny voice. I'm all over the place. I'm scattered. I'm never going to be the best radio personality, but I can outwork everybody. And I knew that from day one, because I knew going back to college, if I wanted people to come to my comedy shows in college, I would print out a stack of flyers and literally go to 1,000 rooms and hand them to people, because I'm going to outwork everybody else that has an event going on that night. I get into radio in the promo crew. I'm the first one there. I'm the last one to leave. I'll take any event, rain or shine. I don't care. I'll do it. I want to be the guy that you can count on. And then when on air happened, I noticed something. 90% of on-air radio personalities are extremely lazy. And it's not their fault. They've been built into a system that allows that, meaning, in the heyday of radio, the morning show would come in, they would do their morning show, they would leave at 10 o'clock. They'd go home. The guys on the midday would come in 10 minutes before their shift. They would do their shift. They would go home. So I noticed this, and I'm like, well, shit, I can outwork all of these people. I I'll stay all day and I'll do production and I'll do this and I'll work harder. And that was my key to success. I'm not better than anybody on the radio. That's totally subjective. I'm not better. I don't sound better. I'm not funny. I'm not better, but I will outwork everybody. And I will make sure that I'm on social media all day and all night. I am putting up on-demand content, exclusive streaming content. I'll do things that nobody else does so that they have to catch up to me. And when they finally caught up to me, I've got to go do the new thing. Like we were putting up podcasts of our show years before radio shows were letting you do that. I had bosses telling me to take it down because then nobody will listen to your morning show. And I ignored them and I left the podcast up. I set up text lines. Nobody had text lines. Everybody still wanted you to call the show. I said, nobody's calling text. I want to wait for them to text us. I set that up. We start doing YouTube Live. Nobody's doing any video content in Central New York. I mean, Stern did it, obviously, and all the big ones did it, but nobody did. YouTube was a dud. I wanted to go to the next thing. We go to Twitch 2 years ago. I go to Twitch. People start catching up to that. So I just got to be one step ahead of everybody. And that's where my success comes in, is I can outwork every single person in this business.
I love it. I love it. How are you coming up with the next steps before people? I mean, I know obviously there's an element that you're just willing to try things, but I mean, you are consistently finding things before they're popular, like new platforms, new ways to engage with people.
I think I'm just a kid of the internet, man. Like I always have been. I've always loved computers and the internet. Like you can't see, but I've got 2 gigantic screens in front of me right now. And after we get off tonight, I'll start prepping for tomorrow, and I'll have, this YouTube channel going with all these articles down here. I just love the internet. And I used to be the young guy in the biz, so I would just be the guy who was ahead of it. But somehow, even at 39, I'm still the young guy in the biz. Like nobody, even younger than me, is paying attention to any of this stuff. So it's just kind of an obsession. It's like what I told you in the beginning. It's the hyper focus. Like I want to know what the next thing is going to be. And when everything starts to feel stale, I want to keep going because I don't ever want to be bored. Like I don't want to be like, oh, just going through the motions today. Because once you do that, they can tell you're doing it and they're not going to be interested either. So it's always about finding that next level.
I love it. And with you said like your setup that we're looking at right now is a streaming setup. What are you streaming in that setup? Are you streaming video games or are you doing a show?
So this is the video that you can see here is basically my home office. That's where everything is. It's a corner of it. I have done a weekly show from here called Whiskey Wednesday, where I drink whiskey on a stream and I do a Q&A. That was on Facebook Live for a couple years. It's been on Twitch now exclusively. If I'm feeling silly, I'll stream some games, but I'll stream games that I like old computer games like Roller Coaster Tycoon or Age of Empires, like stuff that nobody plays anymore. I'll do music streams in here where I'll do sing-alongs. It's funny because this whole setup, you can't really see it, but off to here is my emergency COVID setup. So I've had to use it once. If I have to go in quarantine or we can't go in the office, I can do the morning show from right here. So I have an entire kind of K-Rock studio off to the edge here that I've only had to use once, knock on wood. But yeah, it's everything. This room is everything.
That's cool. Now, have you had any, and I don't want to mispronounce it, but DCMA or DMCA?
DMCA stuff?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of problems, especially with Twitch streamers regarding music rights and all that sort of stuff. Have you run into any problems with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
So I get why they're doing it. It's kind of shitty they're doing it, but I get why they're doing it. Obviously, they own that content. I have not had any issues because I'm in a weird gray area where Galaxy, the company I work for, pays streaming rights for all of our music. Mm-hmm. So I am one of probably a handful of Twitch streamers that actually pay streaming rights to BMI and ASCAP and all these things just because we're a radio station that streams. Mm-hmm. The rule with that is I'm only allowed to play the song once. So if I play, I'm going to start doing DJ streams again. I'm a terrible DJ, but I love all kinds of music. Mm-hmm. And I do them on Friday nights. So as long as I stream those songs just once and not make them available on demand, I'm in the clear to do that. And that comes directly from Twitch. I spoke to them directly about that.
That's
But
once per stream.
I have good friends that do a lot of cover songs, and they've had no issues as long as they're just doing the covers and whatnot and not using any of the original tracks. There's no trouble.
And that's once per stream sort of deal?
Yeah, you're allowed to play it once. You have purchased the rights to stream that song. You have not purchased the rights to make it available on demand. So I couldn't put a song in a podcast, or I couldn't put a song in a video that's on demand, but I have the right to stream it, single use stream.
Interesting. That's fascinating stuff. So at what point did your love for whiskey come into play? And you know, with your show, did you have the whiskey tasting before the whiskey company?
So the funny thing that I always share with people is that I did not start drinking alcohol until I was 30 years old. I didn't drink in college. I didn't drink in my 20s.
Why?
It never interested me.
Okay.
I don't know why. It just never interested me. So I just discovered, you know, as I got older, trust me, I've caught up for it in these last 9 years. I've definitely caught up for it. But it just never interested me. So, you know, I start to do these bar gigs in my late 20s, 29, 30. And I just discovered I didn't really like beer. My first drink ever was a rum and Coke. I went out for my 21st birthday and I was like, I guess I should have a drink. So I got a rum and Coke because I liked Coca-Cola and I didn't like it. And I finished it and I was like, all right, I don't think they need to do that again. And then I really didn't drink much until I was 29, 30 years old. So I'm out, I'm doing these gigs and I didn't like beer and I didn't really like tequila and any of that stuff, but I really liked Jameson whiskey. I just liked it. And I would mix it with ginger ale. I'd do a JMO ginger. and then I'm like, well, and they'd give you these little glasses and I'm like, I like that. I like that warm, fuzzy feeling. Give me a double JMO ginger because I like the taste of that Jameson. And over like, you know, those couple of years, the ginger went away and it just became the JMO. And I just started drinking whiskey straight. And I really, really liked it. Like I like the flavor profiles. I drink it neat, so I don't drink it on ice. I just like the taste of it. It's so interesting to me. And since then, I was like, all right, it's the middle of the week. Nobody's doing anything. I did this on accident. Like most of my career, Rob, you're learning this has been just, I'm going to try this and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting around, I'm in this office. I'm like, I wonder if anybody's on Facebook if they want to have a drink with me. So it's the Wednesday night. I go live on Facebook and, you know, our K-Rock Facebook page has like 180,000 likes. Like it's a monster. So I'm like, hey, come have a drink with Josh. I'm going live. And hundreds of people just start watching me. And I'm like, guys, I don't know what you want. I'm just sitting here. And I didn't know what to do. I'm just like, all right, it's Whiskey Wednesday. Here we go. And I'm just doing this thing. And I'm like, I guess I'll do it again next week. And that was probably 3-4 years ago at this point that I've just been doing it. And it's just this fun little Wednesday night ritual to cut up your week where I'll come in here and we'll bullshit. And I've got a little, you know, I've got a couple of benchmark segments I do. And then I'll close it out with like a sing along of whatever song people throw at me. It's just a fun little random hang in the middle of the week, especially this last year when things have been so weird. People just really enjoy it.
No, that makes, I mean, this past year, it must be an even bigger hit than ever before. I mean, with not being able to go out and just, you know, needing stuff to do.
Dude, and you stream anything. I mean, I've got friends who their careers have changed as musicians because of things like Twitch. Really? You know, they play to bigger audiences than they ever have. My buddy Just Joe, you know, he'd play bar gigs around CNY and Turning Stone and all that, but he's had a couple of nights where he'll get on Twitch and he'll have 5,000 people watching.
Wow.
And he'll just make, I'm not going to speak out of school, but he's making considerable money doing this. And he doesn't have to put pants on or leave his house. So when you ask what's the next thing, I think it's a lot of this. You know, like I really love video streaming. I'm kind of getting to be David Letterman in a weird way, because now I'm on the quote unquote TV and I'm talking into a microphone and I'm talking with people. And the only difference is they can talk back to me, and I really love it. And I love that live interaction. I love when people are enjoying what you're doing. I love when they call you on your bullshit. I love all that real-time feedback of video streaming and Twitch streaming. So that's the next step is this. I don't know what the next level of it is. I got to figure that out, but it's something and I love it.
That's interesting. Do you think Twitch is the platform right now?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
Cool. I like it. Everyone dropping gems for everybody. Dropping So I take it that's how Weekday Whiskey was born. Can you tell us about that process?
It was me. You know, like you realize that you have, you know, it's kind of braggadocious, but you have the ability to move the needle. Like you realize if I talk about something and I endorse it, people go try it. And in a completely selfish move, I thought, well, why don't I just tell them about my own whiskey? Why would I keep pushing them to all these other whiskeys. Why don't I just get my own? And I started stashing money away probably a year and a half ago. And it was such a bummer because I was like, you know, I knew I had to stash away probably like 10 grand. And I was like, all right, if I get 10 grand, I can get the money I need to get the product and get the bottles and all that stuff. So I'm like a squirrel with nuts, man. I'm stashing it away, whatever I can get. And it was like the beginning of March last year. And I was close to that 10. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And I'd been talking to Lock One Distilling about it. They're friends. I was like, I'll pay you guys to make this for me. And I want it to be my product and I want to be my own business and all this stuff. And then fucking COVID happens. My whole business model was these little bottles. If you can see on the video, Weekday Whiskey bottles. Because I'm like, I go to a lot of concerts. I go to a lot of events for work. These little bottles people can stash in their pockets, their purse, whatever, grab a little sip of the whiskey. My goal was to have it be a whiskey that's super light, super smooth, and you can just stash it and walk around with it. So then COVID happens and everything gets canceled. And not only that, COVID happens and I'm like, I don't think I can spend this money on whiskey right now because who's to say I'll have a job? Like I need to save this. If people are losing their jobs. So luckily I didn't. You know, our company was great. They're like, hey, we're going to figure out, you know, the PPE stuff. We were a small enough company that they're like, you know, we're going to have to adjust hours and do a whole bunch of shifting around, but it worked out for everybody. And I'm like, okay, then I think I'll go forward with the whiskey. So I did. And I had to kind of pivot a little bit, stick with the little bottles, but then I had to, you know, obviously people weren't going anywhere. Let's do some big bottles for at home. And that's the long story of it. It was over a year ago, I start planning this idea with the biggest roadblock I could have planned for, which then ended up being the biggest blessing because people are drinking a lot more and they're doing it at home. And my stuff is affordable and easy to get. And it's just been, it's 2020 was a great year for me. It wasn't for a lot of people and I'm sympathetic for that. And I'm terribly sorry for a lot of people, but for me, I had a great year.
I feel like this probably allowed you to interact with and kind of have a more personal relationship with all of these people that you are talking with on live, doing these whiskey tastings and these live shows and everything. Now it's like, hey, look, you go grab this, I'll grab this. This is my product. We can talk about it. Was that kind of what it was like?
Yeah, I wanted them to have it. My goal was to be a whiskey that whiskey snobs would like. And I'm not a whiskey snob. I legitimately just like to catch a buzz. I'm not one of these guys who's like, I need to have a so-and-so with a rye and a single barrel. I don't give a shit about any of that. Does it taste good? And does it give me that warm, buzzy feeling that I like? So that was my goal, is to give that to people that they would like. And, you know, not make it a cash grab. Like this isn't for me to get rich off of. This is literally my retirement plan. So my wife retires in 15 years from teaching. I want to build this brand up to a place where in 15 years, when she retires, it can also sustain me as a paycheck. You know, I'm not looking to become a millionaire off this. I'm looking to have a good whiskey that people like, people will continue to buy, that you can trust as a good product, and that I can drive around the country in 15 years and go to, national parks and be an old man. That's all I want to be.
What have you learned about business or this business specifically that you didn't know at the beginning that you wish you knew when you started?
What did I learn?
Has anything caught you off guard or maybe surprised you in a good or bad way?
I mean, the bottle size
Really?
was a prime example of you think you know what you're talking about, but you don't. Where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to sell you a 200 milliliter bottle at a $15 price point, $16 price point. And then I realized pretty quickly that that's not the only product people wanted. And I had to pretty quickly pivot to the 750s because people were buying it and they were doing it to be polite. I think they were like, hey man, this is what you sell, but we really would like a better price point. You know what I'm saying? So like you're getting more liquid in the 750 for a lot lower price than you are in the 200 mLs. 200 mLs you're paying for convenience. Well, there's no need to pay for convenience right now because where are we going?
Yeah.
So I literally learned like 2 weeks after we launched, you got to go bigger. You got to get bigger bottles. And you might be doing that. You might be shooting your smaller product in the foot when you do that. But this was the market telling me what I had to do. I thought I knew one thing and the market told me I was wrong. So I got in the SUV. I drove out to Waterloo Bottle and Container. I bought a couple pallets of the 750s. I picked out the one I wanted, ordered labels, and told Lock One, we got to get 750s out as soon as possible. And that was the biggest lesson I learned is that, it goes back to you think you know, but you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I had an idea, and it was a good idea, and it still is. And people are still buying the 200s. The 200s, I think, are more for people who want to try it. And I think once summertime comes around, it's going to be for, I'm gonna really target golf courses and golfers and people who are going to be out and about and just want a little bottle. That business isn't going anywhere, especially because I own 5,000 bottles of it. It's not going anywhere. So I got to move them at some point. But the market told me that you're a little off base and we want a bigger product. And that was my biggest lesson that I learned.
Cool. I love it. I'm going to shout out Kelvin real quick, and I'm going to ask you a quick question. But Kelvin, if you want to hop in with anything, man, after this next question, feel free to hop in, brother. How the hell, Josh, are you juggling everything you have going on? What kind of like time management? I mean, being a father is probably plenty of work as its own, but you have like 4 other major things going on. What are you doing to juggle everything?
It's for being as scatterbrained as I am, I'm very regimented, as weird as that seems. So my everydays are almost exactly the same. I get up at 4:44 because it's an even number and I like it.
I love the number 444.
And then I get to work at 5:30. I get all my equipment set up. A lot of guys will get there earlier to prep their show. I prep the night before. So I'm there. I do the show 6 to 10. From 10 to 11, I do any kind of in-office work that I need to do. Recording commercials, working with sales, whatever that is. 11 to 12 will be other in-office work. I'll be working on the podcast. I'll be working on promos. If I need to stay after 12, I will. But in a lot of cases, 12 o'clock, I'm usually pretty free, 12 or 1. So from 12 to 2 is whiskey time. I can do deliveries. I can do sales calls. I can run around. And then from 2 till 7 is daddy time, daddy husband time. I'll do dinner. I'll do dishes. We'll sit on the couch. We'll watch TV. We'll do, I might have to work with my daughter to play her saxophone here in a little bit. Like that's daddy time, home time. And then from 8 to 9 is show prep. So I'll get in here and I'll read the stories and I'll get ready for the next day's show, go to bed at 9, do it all again the next day. It's like, I just like that. I like a routine. I like to have it's like a mental checklist where I section everything off and it all works out. Knock on wood. Somehow it does.
I feel like you kind of have to. I was imagining you would have to with everything you have going on.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm gonna shout
And
out.
then Saturdays and Sundays, I literally do nothing. I
Just
really find it
recharge.
important to just completely unplug and watch mindless television sometimes. Like there's this cliche thing where you've got to work yourself to death and I'll sleep when I'm dead and all that stuff. I
Hustle
don't feel like that's
porn.
healthy for me. I don't feel like that's good for my brain.
Yeah.
So I'll completely unplug on the weekends. And if the kids want to do something, we'll go do something. But there's no pressure. The weekends are so low pressure.
Nice. Do you find yourself having the urge ever to do stuff on the weekends? Like, do you ever have to restrain yourself from working, or is that not a problem that you have?
um, my wife can restrain me from working a lot of times because it's
Mm.
like, I'm always looking at this thing. So I'm always like saying, what's going on? What's going on my phone? What's going
Yeah.
on with that? With the weekends, I don't really care. I put it down. I don't think about it.
Nice.
I have found that in my life, like you fill your brain, it's a weird analogy, but your brain is like a bucket and you're filling it with all these things. And then my job is to come in on Monday and start telling you those things as they come out of the bucket. So you'll like, I always say on like a Friday, man, I'm out of ideas. Like I'm out of thoughts, I'm out of words. And then I just use that Saturday and Sunday to just refill the bucket. Like whether I'm filling it with life experiences, like I like to challenge myself to do things. So like this past weekend, I wanted to do a pot roast. I've never made a pot roast before. So I did that. I want to build like an indoor mini golf course. So I'm going to do that at some point. Like I just like to fill my weekends with fun stuff.
I love it. I love it. I know Kelvin wants to say something. Kelvin, what's going
Yeah,
on?
what's up, Calvin?
Oh, nothing. I was just coming back in here because I heard my name about 5 minutes ago. So
Kelvin
I
is.
think we woke Calvin up.
I'm enjoying this.
Kelvin's a musician currently in the studio right now. Something I bet Josh can appreciate.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
So cool.
of course.
Very cool. Well, Josh, man, I really appreciate you doing this. If I can ask you one more thing, and Kelvin, if you have anything you want to ask and you want to hop in, feel free. But if you could go back to younger you, or let's say if you could talk to, let's say younger you. If you could go back to 15, 16-year-old you and give you one tip of advice that you know now that you wish you knew back then, what would you say to younger you?
I would say that nobody knows what they're talking about. Like you think when you're a 15-year-old or even a 20-year-old, even when I was in this business 25, even 30, you just assume that everyone who is your elder or has been doing it a little longer than you knows everything. And if your ideas are different from theirs, you're wrong because they obviously know what they're doing. Obviously, respect the people who have done it, take lessons from them and learn from them, but their word is not gospel. You should take the things you've learned and digest it through your own filter and always put out your own product. Don't try to be fake. Don't be, like when you're that age, you're very impressionable. So you think that, well, this guy's my professor. He knows more than I do. And he does. In a technical sense, he or she does. But you might have a thought that they've never had. They're not perfect. Your boss is not perfect. Your parents were not perfect. I am not perfect to my kids. They'll figure out someday that I'm full of shit. That's the point, is that you've got to figure out, the sooner you can figure out that everyone is full of shit, the better off you're going to be. Because then you can start to make your own path and not worry about this path that's been carved before you.
Boom. I love it. Kelvin, anything?
I know that was actually a really good analogy though. What you just said about the kids thing. It's very true. Like at least for me, I'm realizing every day more full of shit than my parents are. So
Yeah, and it's like I have all these kids that'll come out of college, like your guys' age, who will come out of college and they'll come to the radio station and they'll want to intern or whatever, and they're so timid and they're just like, okay, yeah, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. And I kind of want them to have a little bit of a fuck you attitude because I want you do what you're going to do here. Like I'll tell you where the buttons go and I'll tell you where the bathroom is. And if you have a question, ask me. But everything I say isn't right. And that's the way with everybody. It's so easy to fall in this trap of, I got to do exactly what my boss says because my boss knows everything. They don't fucking know everything. They're a dumbass just like you. They just happen to be around longer.
I feel like
Unless
college
my
kind
boss
of
hears
set.
this, in which case my boss is a genius and he knows everything.
I feel like college kind of sets you up, unfortunately, like that though. You know,
It does. It's the
it
system, man. It
yeah.
really does.
Cool. Well, brother, Josh, thank you so much.
This was awesome.
Dude, can you you know, I doubt there's a single person out here that is listening to this that doesn't know who you are, but for anyone who's not currently following you on social, can you plug all your socials anywhere that you can be found?
Everything is at K-Rock Josh or at Weekday Whiskey. So Weekday Whiskey on Instagram and Facebook, and then at K-Rock Josh, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and krock.com for the times to listen to the show, podcast, all that stuff. Man.
Hell yeah, man. Boom. Thank you so much for doing this.
This was awesome, man. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely, brother. Until next time, this has been Free Coffee with Rob Riley, and Kelvin McChesney is behind the edits. Josh Grosvent, thank you so much, man.
You got it, man. Thank you.
See you guys.